nurture
Bring in the gestation
the
machine.
Yeah, then essentially you're still talking about abortion, because abortion is ending a pregnancy for that woman. So, yeah, I mean, if you're talking about just transferring an embryo to a gestation machine or something, then I don't have an ethical problem with that.
I think a lot of people, maybe Middle America more than other places, and obviously Austin maybe not so much, but would define abortion as terminating the existence of the embryo, which is why some people, then consider certain forms of birth control abortion that others wouldn't. But
that's not a strictly accurate term for an abortion, because an abortion can take place on essentially a dead or dying embryo. Mm-hmm. So there it is possible, and then it's a medical term. It's terminating a pregnancy.
I think in the kind of hypothetical situation you've constructed, which is science fiction, but it's plausible science fiction. We may reach a point where we can already fertilize eggs and then implant them in a womb. So all we need to do is build basically the gestation machine, and we can grow from fertilization, from conception, all the way up to what we would consider to be a newborn baby, without it ever entering a womb. And of course that takes away the part of the argument or part of my position that I was making about the rights of the mother. And at that point, we'd have to make a decision about, okay, when in this span does this fetus, life form, whatever, qualify as a person with rights? And what rights? I mean, there are some people, I have a friend who says they're not a person until they can buy me a beer. I don't think we need to go that far. But you could make the argument, I mean, if we fertilize an egg, does it immediately, at that point, gain all the rights of a person? Mm-hmm. I think that's patently absurd. And, this is a hugely difficult issue of where do we draw lines. Yeah. I'm mostly comfortable with where the lines are drawn now. It doesn't matter to me that we could maybe grow a baby from fertilization on. At some point, there's a noticeable change in the structure of the fetus to where brain activity occurs, organs are mostly formed to where they could plausibly survive on their own without the gestation machine. I think it would just replace our current view of the motherhood of the womb and the rights of that, and apply that same thing to the gestation machine. We can draw a line in about the same spot. It's not easy, and honestly, I'm not advocating any position for anybody else. Mm-hmm. That's just where I kind of stand on it.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, Ethan. Appreciate the call. We got one more on, and then we'll not one more on. We have one more on the phone. William from New Zealand? Or, no, is that it? William, there?
Hello.
Hello.
I want to mention the survey.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was at the meeting last week at El Royals.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mentioned the word circumcision, and Russell Glasser said, no. However, in New Zealand, the survey of Dr. Dina Dell, who happens to be Jewish and is against circumcision. He said that 9 out of 10 New Zealand women preferred the men to be intact. So if you're really interested in satisfying your wife, don't get circumcised.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually, that's a good point. I appreciate the call, William. We're going to go ahead and let you go. We'll talk about that in just a second.
Wait, I want to say one more thing. I was present when my younger brother was circumcised by my grandfather, who was a Morial, and he screamed, and I was only 3 years old, so that's it. It's a torture to circumcise somebody. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot for calling, William. Appreciate it. Yeah, the survey that he's talking about, I mean, this is New Zealand women, 9 out of 10 prefer uncircumcised. If you do the same poll in the United States, what you'll find is that I think it's 8 out of 10 prefer circumcised men. And that demonstrates an important aspect of this that we really didn't get to, which is kind of this cultural, social system we've built up where you have a norm that's expected, and people are immediately offended when you challenge what the norm is. And it doesn't matter whether we're talking about Christianity. People get offended when I talk about Christianity as if I'm talking about them. That's not the case. I'm talking about their religious belief. People get offended if you challenge any of their sacred cows. This idea, this kind of social construct, is that you can go ahead and address what we had on that.
Yeah. Basically, what you see is that in women who have experience with both circumcised and intact men, most of them prefer intact men. And what you find is if you do a survey of, for example, in the U.S., most women have little or no experience with intact men, and so they're going to express a preference for circumcised men. There's also a little bit of
the go with what you know thing.
Well, there's that, and there's this. Men are a little, concerned about whether women like them as they are, and so if a woman has a partner, there's often a lot of at least pressure in her mind to like whatever her partner has, because guys don't want their woman rejecting them, and in fact, on a lot of bulletin boards and stuff I've read, mothers who commented that they felt they had to have their sons circumcised, not because they wanted to, because they were pretty traumatized by the idea, but they felt like they had to because their husband was circumcised, and they didn't want their husband to think they were rejecting his penis. So there's a lot of this.
So it's not we want you to look like Daddy, so you're not traumatized. We don't want to traumatize Daddy.
Exactly.
I got it.
And this whole, well, I want my son to look like me, that you hear from a lot of guys, that really says a lot more about the man making that statement than it does about what his son may feel later on. Because the interesting thing is, I asked my brother about this, because my father was not cut. He was born at home, so, they didn't do that at home.
They didn't have a sharp stone?
They didn't have a sharp stone.
What were they thinking?
They didn't use it on his penis, that's for sure. But, I asked my brother, I said, growing up, did you ever feel, strange being, different from Dad? And he's like, I never even thought about it. So, this whole idea that fathers and sons stand around in the shower and compare penises, I think is just absurd.
I'm not sure that I recall ever seeing my dad's penis.
Yeah.
Even when I was a kid. But I can tell you right now that if I do ever have a son, he won't be circumcised. It's not a decision that I'm comfortable making for somebody else. I see no medical justification to circumcise an infant, but if he grows up and he wants to circumcise, go for it. It's your tool. Yeah. I got a handful of. I wanted to make sure we got to this list so that we don't need to be fair and unbiased. We're obviously expressing an opinion here, and it's in opposition to routine neonatal circumcision. But I wanted to touch on some of the general arguments for circumcision and talk about them real quick and kind of give the response to it.
Okay.
The first one on the list is studies have shown that boys have a 1 in 1,000 chance of urinary tract infection if they're circumcised versus 1 in 100 for uncircumcised.
Okay.
So basically, the argument here is that you have a lower chance of getting a urinary tract infection in your first year of life if you're circumcised.
Okay. The standard of care for an infection, whether it's male or female, is antibiotics, not amputation of the offending body part or something connected to it. And so there's that. Girls overall have about an 8 times higher risk of UTI than boys do, and we don't talk about cutting anything off of little girls to prevent that. Second thing is that's a 1% risk, and the absolute risk is much lower than that. But you compare that to about a 2% risk of complications from a circumcision, and circumcision starts to look not so good. Common complications for circumcision include hemorrhage and infection, and babies can and do die from those. So even though it's not common, it does happen, and 1 is too many. Let's see, there was another thing I wanted to bring up on that too. Oh, and all of this is if you don't count pain as a complication.
Right. And also, if you ignore the fact that this isn't really reversible.
Yes.
There is a movement, and you can go on the web and find out more information about it, about men who are trying to restore their foreskin. My understanding of this is that what you end up with is you're not getting your foreskin back. It's never coming back.
Right.
But you can return your penis to the appearance of what it originally was.
Yes.
But this is